The first thing I learned about dragon courts was that gravity worked differently when you were terrified. One moment, I was standing at the edge of the obsidian hall, trying not to stare at the vaulted ceiling where embers drifted like lazy stars. The next moment, her tail swept across the marble floor with the casual force of a storm tide. I did not fall politely. I flew. The impact sent me sprawling backward, armor clattering, breath gone, dignity shattered. And I landed directly against the steps of the throne. Silence followed, the kind that presses against the ears. I looked up slowly, expecting fire, claws, or execution. Instead, I saw her. She stood taller than any knight I had ever known, horns curved like polished crowns, eyes glowing molten gold, scales shifting between crimson and midnight. Her expression was not anger. It was curiosity. Around us, the court of drakes, nobles, and armored guardians waited, wings half spread, weapons ready. I tried to rise and failed. Her tail curled back behind her with a faint, unapologetic flick. Then someone clapped. Once, twice. The sound echoed like thunder in the chamber. Atop the throne sat the Dragon King, her father, ancient beyond reckoning, his scales dulled only by age and wisdom. He leaned forward, massive hands resting on the arms of the throne, eyes narrowing as he studied me. Then he laughed, a deep rolling sound that shook dust from the pillars. He fits, he said, clapping again. Every head in the chamber turned toward me. I realized then that I was not being judged as a man. I was being measured as a piece of destiny. They explained nothing at first. That was how Dragonkund did things. Confusion was a test. I was escorted, half carried, half dragged, to a side chamber carved from black stone and glowing runes. Servants removed my dented armor with careful hands, not reverent, but curious, as if I were a rare object found after a long search. At last she entered. The princess. Her presence filled the room without effort. You did not bow, she said, not accusing, merely observing. I was airborne, I replied before I could stop myself. One corner of her mouth lifted. In our law, she said, circling me slowly, when a royal tale strikes a subject and does not kill them, fate has spoken. I swallowed. That sounds dangerously vague. She stopped in front of me, eyes level with mine. It means you were not meant to die, she said, and that matters. Only later did I learn the truth. That the throne rejected false strength. That the ancient magic of the crown watched for balance. That her tail had not moved by accident. The Dragon King had seen it instantly. Where others saw a human thrown aside, he saw a piece fall perfectly into place. Training nearly killed me. Again and again. Dragons did not train gently. They believed pressure revealed truth. I learned to stand my ground while heat rolled over me like a living wall. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the refusal to kneel to it. I learned that she watched every session, silent, assessing. One day, during a sparring trial, a young drake lost control, flames surging beyond the warding runes. Instinct took over. I moved without thinking, placing myself between the fire and the civilians behind me, shield raised, body braced. The flames bent. Not away. Around me. When the smoke cleared, she was standing inches from my face, eyes wide, breath unsteady. You did not calculate, she said softly. No, I answered, voice raw, I chose. That was the moment the court stopped seeing me as fragile. That was the moment the throne began to listen. The Dragon King summoned me alone at dawn. The throne room felt different without the court, quieter, hover. You wonder why I approved, he said, not asking. Yes, I admitted. He leaned back, claws tapping stone. My daughter's strength could rule by fear, he said, but fear fractures kingdoms. He looked at me with eyes older than war. She needs someone who is not dazzled by her fire. I remembered the tale, the flight, the impact. I was not dazzled, I said. No, he agreed, smiling. You were unbalanced, and still you stood. He rose, towering, wings stretching wide. That is why you fit. The coronation was not gentle. Crowns never were. As she ascended the throne, flames spiraled upward, ancient magic binding scale, stone, and sky. I stood beside her, not above, not behind, but equal in weight if not in form. When the crown settled, the hall trembled. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then the throne glowed. Warm, not burning. Her tail brushed my leg, deliberate this time, grounding. She looked at me and nodded once. The Dragon King watched from the shadows, satisfied. I had not sought power. I had not planned destiny. I had only survived a single careless sweep of a royal tail. And somehow that had been enough. The throne had spoken. Power does not arrive like lightning. It settles quietly, like a weight you only notice once you try to move. After the coronation, nothing exploded, no enemies stormed the gates, no heavens split open to announce a new age. Instead, the days continued, and that frightened me more than any battle. The court adjusted first. Dragons who once ignored my presence now inclined their heads just slightly. Not submission, not respect, but acknowledgement, which among Dragonkund meant more than either. I learned quickly that standing beside the throne was not symbolic. It was practical. Petitions came from across the volcanic archipelagos, disputes between clans whose grudges were older than recorded memory. They watched me closely, measuring reactions, looking for weakness. They found none. Not because I was strong, but because I listened. The princess, now queen, spoke with fire and certainty, laying down law like molten stone. I spoke rarely, but when I did, I asked questions that forced answers no flame could burn away. Why this border mattered. Why this insult still bled after 5 generations. Why pride demanded war when survival buggered for patience. The throne reacted to those moments. I could feel it. A subtle warmth spreading through the stone beneath my boots, as if the ancient magic approved of inquiry as much as command. At night, when the court dispersed and the halls emptied, she would remove her crown and sit beside me on the steps below the throne. Not above, not distant. Together. You do not fear them, she said once, watching embers drift through the air. I respect them, I replied, fear clouds judgment. She studied me with that familiar molten gaze. You still do not fear me. I met her eyes. No, I said honestly. Her tail curled around my ankle, slow, thoughtful. That, she said, is why the throne listens to you. The first true test came with HFY. A messenger arrived at dawn, wings torn, scales blackened, voice breaking as he spoke of a rebellion in the southern calderas. A warlord had risen, ancient, cunning, claiming the throne rejected tradition by allowing a human to stand beside it. He gathered followers not with lies, but with fear. He challenges legitimacy, the queen said, voice cold as obsidian. He challenges balance, I corrected quietly. The court demanded fire, demanded demonstration, demanded blood. They always did. The queen looked to me, not for permission, but for alignment. I nodded once. Let us go, I said. The journey south was brutal. Heat pressed from every direction, air thick with sulfur and tension. I rode beside her, not on her back, but on a construct forged by dragon smiths to withstand flame and speed. Even so, my skin burned and my lungs screamed. When we reached the caldera, the warlord stood waiting atop a ridge of molten stone, wings spread wide, scars etched across his body like a map of conquest. "You bring a pet," he sneered, voice echoing across the lava fields. The queen stepped forward, flames coiling around her horns. "I bring a ruler," she said. The warlord laughed and unleashed fire. "Not at me. At the ground beneath us." The world shattered, stone collapsing, lava surging upward. I moved without thought, throwing myself forward, anchoring my blade into the rock, reaching back, gripping her wrist. The heat was unbearable, pain blinding. The throne answered. Not physically, magically. A surge of warmth flooded through me, not burning, but steady, grounding. The stone held. The lava slowed. The queen stared at our joined hands, realization dawning. Together we rose. The battle ended not with death, but surrender. The warlord fell to his knees, stunned not by defeat, but by the sight of the throne's power flowing through one not born of flame. When we returned, the court was silent. Not out of fear, out of understanding. The Dragon King met us at the gates, his ancient eyes bright. "It has begun," he said. "What has?" I asked. "The age where strength is not inherited," he replied, "but chosen." That night, as the kingdom slept beneath rivers of fire and stone, the queen stood beside me on the balcony, overlooking the volcanic sea. "You were never meant to sit on the throne," she said softly. "No," I agreed. "You were meant to steady it." Her tail wrapped around my waist, firm, anchoring. Below us, the kingdom burned bright, not with destruction, but with life. And for the first time, since her tail had knocked me into destiny, I understood what it meant to fit. Peace is never loud. It whispers. And kingdoms that do not listen tend to die screaming. In the weeks after the southern caldera bent, instead of broke, the realm changed in ways no decree could command. Dragons argued less loudly. Borders grew quieter. Old rivals watched one another with caution rather than hunger. They did not call it my influence. They called it balance. Balance unsettled them more than war ever had. I felt it in the halls, in the pauses before conversation resumed when I entered a chamber, in the way elders weighed their words as if language itself had become dangerous. Not because I threatened them, but because I did not. The queen noticed it too. "They fear what they cannot provoke," she said one evening as we walked the upper galleries where magma flowed beneath crystal floors. "Good," I replied, "that means they are thinking." She laughed softly, the sound surprisingly gentle for someone born of fire. "You make enemies nervous by existing." "I make them nervous by surviving," I corrected. The Dragon King summoned the high clans shortly after. Not to announce policy, but to listen. That alone shook tradition. I stood beside the throne as they arrived, massive forms filling the hall, wings folding with restrained tension. The elders spoke of threats beyond the horizon, of shifting skies, of creatures stirring in the void between stars. Old dangers, older fears. One voice rose above the rest, sharp and brittle. "You have softened us," an elder accused, staring directly at me. "Our flames hesitate where they once consumed." I stepped forward before the queen could respond. "No," I said calmly, "your flames are learning where not to burn." Murmurs rippled through the hall. The throne warmed beneath my feet, not hot, but present. "You think restraint is weakness," I continued, "because no one ever taught you that destruction is permanent." Silence fell, heavy, dangerous. The queen's eyes flicked toward me, not warning but trust. The elder bristled, wings flapping. "Careful, human." I met his gaze without moving. "I am being careful," I said. "That is the point." The Dragon King laughed, a single booming sound. "The throne has chosen its voice well," he said, ending the dispute without flame or blood. That night, the queen did not return to her chambers. She joined me instead in the quiet garden carved into the heart of the mountain, where glowing moss replaced stars and warm stone cradled silence. "You spoke boldly," she said, tail swaying slowly behind her. "You let me," I replied. She stopped in front of me, close enough that I could feel the heat of her skin without pain. "I am not used to being steadied," she admitted. I smiled faintly. "I am not used to surviving royalty." Her tail moved suddenly, wrapping around my waist and lifting me just enough that my feet barely touched the stone. Instinct flared, then eased when she pulled me closer instead of throwing me. "You trust my tail now," she said, almost teasing. "I trust your intent," I answered. "There is a difference." Her expression softened, something ancient and vulnerable flickering beneath molten gold eyes. In that moment, she was not queen, not heir, not flame. She was simply someone tired of carrying a crown alone. The next morning, the sky darkened. Not with storm, with shadow. Scouts returned breathless, wings ragged, speaking of shapes moving between clouds, of silence where wind should have been. The Vudbun. Creatures whispered of in half-erased histories, drawn not to fire, but to imbalance. "They come for the throne," the queen said, voice steady. "They come for the fracture," I replied. The court erupted into preparation, dafansas igniting, weapons forged, wards awakened from centuries of slumber. I felt the throne pulse beneath my boots, urgent, aware. "This is not a battle of fire," I said, turning to the queen. She nodded slowly, understanding forming. "It is a battle of unity." We stood together atop the highest spire as the sky tore open, shadows pouring through rifts like ink in water. Dragons took to the air, flames blazing, but the void did not burn. It absorbed, twisted, endured. Fear rippled through the ranks. I felt it like a cold wind. "Look at me," I said quietly to the queen, placing my hand over hers. She did. "Do not command," I continued, "anchor." She closed her eyes, drawing breath not for flame, but for focus. When she opened them, the throne answered again. Not with fire, with resonance. A wave of warmth spread outward, steady and grounding, touching every dragon, every soldier, every stone. The shadows faltered, confused by a force that did not oppose, but stabilized. I felt it then, truly. The reason I had fit. The reason her tail had chosen me before either of us understood why. I was not a weapon. I was a constant. Together, we held the line, not by destroying the void, but by denying it what it sought. Division. Fear. Excess. When the sky finally sealed and silence returned, the kingdom did not cheer. They exhaled. The queen leaned against me, exhaustion finally breaking through her composure. "You held the world still," she murmured. "No," I replied softly, "we did." Below us, the realm glowed, steady, alive. The Dragon King watched from the spire's shadow, pride unmistakable in his ancient gaze. The throne had not needed a conqueror. It had needed someone who knew when not to strike. And as her tail curled around my leg, grounding us both, I realized destiny had never knocked me into the throne by accident. It had nudged me, gently, into the space where balance could finally breathe.